Okay, we need to talk about the Otsutsuki because they are the source of some of the biggest plot holes in Naruto and Boruto, and we need to cover those plot holes. You know what also needs to get covered? The fact that 70% of the people who watch my videos don't even subscribe to my page. So go ahead, and before we get into it, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell, because only 25% of my subscribers have hit the noti bell. Okay, where to even start with the plot holes? I guess the first one would be to talk about Kaguya and her coming to the earth. Essentially, what we're told in Naruto Shippuden when Kaguya is introduced and they're doing Hagoromo and Hamura's backstory is that a seed fell off a meteor, and that seed happened to be the seed for a world tree or a god tree, the big tree that grows a chakra fruit. That seed then fell to earth and started to grow said tree, and the people around that tree started to worship it. People believed that this tree was helping them and enriching the nature around them. But other people saw that once you got near the tree, it simply yanked all of your energy and or chakra, before they knew the word for it, out of you and used you for sustenance. And that apparently the Otsutsukis go around to different worlds in order to find where these seeds have fallen and then eat the fruit of the tree that they find. However, the fruit will only, fruit after it consumes the entire sustenance of the planet it's landed on. So let's quickly cover what we've talked about here. Essentially, a seed fell, landed on an earth, and now that seed needs an entire planet's worth of sustenance to bear a chakra fruit. The only problem with this is that bears no resemblance to what we've been told in Boruto. In fact, if you consider what we've been told in Boruto, that entire situation sounds insane. Because what we've been told in Boruto is that an Otsutsuki will travel to a planet they have interest in or they think would make a good fruit by all of the chakra they can derive from it, and they will bring the seed for the god tree or the world tree with them, and that seed is a 10 tails. They will then, with a lower ranked Otsutsuki, descend to the earth, put the 10 tails down, and feed the lower ranked Otsutsuki to the 10 tails in order to make a world tree. Then, based on the strength of that lower ranked Otsutsuki, a tree will grow to a certain height. A stronger Otsutsuki makes a stronger tree with a better fruit, a weaker the opposite. And at that point, the world tree will then begin to take the sustenance or the nature chakra of the entire earth, and that will then play into the fruiting of the world tree, is at least what we think they're telling us, because ever since the war arc, every time a world tree has been brought up, simply offering an Otsutsuki seems to be enough in order for the world tree to grow, and that the strength of the sacrifice to the 10 tails is completely what dictates how powerful the chakra fruit will become. There has been absolutely no mention of taking the entire sustenance of the world. It seems as though it's actually just a byproduct of the world tree growing and has nothing to do with the strength of the fruit growing. So this makes it seem, in Boruto at least, that an Otsutsuki needs to go to a planet in order to grow a world tree, because if they did it on their own planet, it would destroy their planet. And they tell us it's deliberate. Nothing to do with a seed falling off a meteorite and Otsutsuki's being like, oh boy, I wish I could find one of those world trees around here. They bring the world tree. On top of that, in Naruto Shippuden during the war arc, Kaguya is confronted by Hamura and Hagoromo, her two children. And when they confront her, I shit you not, she takes the world tree, which has already grown into herself, and becomes a 10 tails, which is the opposite of how it's supposed to happen, and is the opposite of how we were told it was going to happen by Ishiki. Well, technically we were told by Amado, but Amado was told by Ishiki. According to Ishiki, and therefore Amado, Ishiki and Kaguya traveled to the earth with a 10 tails, where she was supposed to be fed to the 10 tails, and that would make the world tree, and Ishiki would then eat that chakra, and Kaguya would come back with her karma marking, which By the way, she should have somewhere out there, meaning that Kaguya can reincarnate into the body of whoever she karma marked. But I made a whole video on that. It should be right about, I'm getting better at it here. So the question is, how was the God tree there in the first place? And how did she absorb it and then turn into a 10 tails in reverse? Also, if you think about both of those things, so essentially the 10 tails that got split up by Hagoromo into the 9 tails was Kaguya and the God tree, correct? But Ishiki says they brought a 10 tails, which would mean at one point there was 2 separate 10 tails, or would mean that they brought a 10 tails, fed it an Otsutsuki who wasn't Kaguya or Ishiki, that grew a world tree, and then Kaguya took that world tree into her and became a 10 tails again. And then that 10 tails got split into the 9 tails, but that still leaves the 10 tails at the Kara hideout, who Ishiki said they brought with them, they being Ishiki and Kaguya, which would mean they brought 3 10 tails, sort of, because Kaguya technically turned into one of them. And since we're talking about Ishiki and the knowledge he imparted onto us, can we talk about the 10 tails in the war arc? Because the 10 tails in the war arc was made by bringing together the 9-tailed beasts into the ghetto statue and then using that to reincarnate the 10 tails. Since the ghetto statue, also known as the demonic statue of the outer path by Madara, was simply the husk of the 10 tails that was sealed into the moon. But Kaguya was the 10 tails after she took in the world tree. So is the husk of her also the husk of the 10 tails, aka the ghetto statue? How was that summoned separately from Kaguya? But since we're talking about the 10 tails in Naruto Shippuden, the war arc, let's talk about the fact that the 10 tails just kind of turned into a god tree when Obito snapped his finger. He was like, oh, you ate enough? Cool. Now how about we go ahead and make you into a tree? No Otsutsuki sacrifice to be found. And you could say, nay.
Well, that's because that 10 tails was actually the combination of Kaguya and a god tree already, so it already technically had an Otsutsuki sacrifice.
But here's the thing, Kaguya was never a sacrifice, or it would imply the existence of a third Otsutsuki that they fed to it, which makes no sense because they travel in pairs. I don't get it. I don't get any of it. In synopsis, Naruto Shippuden says that world tree seeds fall from space and the Otsutsukis follow them, and once that tree is eaten up the chakra of the entire planet, it bears a fruit that the Otsutsuki eat. But Boruto says that the Otsutsuki bring 10 tails, that are the seeds, plant them, feed them an Otsutsuki, and then depending on the strength of that Otsutsuki, that bears a chakra, fruit of relative strength. Kaguya and Ishiki brought at least 2 10 tails for some reason. One that made either the world tree prior to Kaguya getting there, or the one in the war arc, and the one at the Kara hideout. You know, just in case they lost the one, which technically they did. And I'm confused and angry. If I've helped open your eyes a little bit to the plot holes that are coming along with the Otsutsukis, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, I make enough content praising Naruto. I should get to tear it down every once in a while.